Well, there are some seriously smart people on YouTube, but some of the comments are also quite terrifying. I posted this video yesterday and we've got 6,000 views on it, load of comments. You can see clearly I don't do this for the money. The comments were actually quite supportive of what the case I was trying to put forward, but also there were quite a few people who were really doubting the figures. There were also a huge chunk of you who were like, yeah, you've got a point, but why don't you consider this factor? So I just quickly adjusted some of the spreadsheet to take into account some of your comments. First of all, a couple of people noticed that I'd put the export rate for Octopus Go at 9 pence per kilowatt hour, and it's actually 8 pence per kilowatt hour. So that shifts a little bit, but not a huge amount. I added the 15% for conversion losses. I've left my top bar within the screen grab here so you can see the formula, which is basically taking the consumption, multiplying it by the unit rate, and then by the adding 15% on for the conversion loss. Now, there was a little bit of debate, as I can see. Some people were quite adamant that the conversion loss was 10%, others saying 20%. I've done a little bit of research and I've just decided to just split the difference 15%. Anyway, that is probably the biggest thing that shifts the figures. And as you can see now, you need to use over 65% from cheap rate electricity if you're comparing Octopus Go to Octopus Tracker. Again, I'm not using the price cap rates here. I'm using Octopus Tracker as the base rate because that's what I'm on, and anyone can go onto that without any special hardware, no batteries, no solar needed. Okay. And of course, not including capital costs. I wasn't including conversion losses before, but now I am. So this is the amount of export that could potentially be generated. If you've got 4,000 kilowatt hours to export at 15p, it's £600. At 8p, it's £320. Okay, these are some of the massive assumptions that I've made, and granted, these are just huge assumptions. I'm just some random guy on the internet with a spreadsheet, and I don't have all the data to fully populate all of this. So my annual consumption is forecast based on our historic use of 2,500 kilowatt hours for our home, but with a recent installation of our heat pump, an additional 3,000 kilowatt hours, which the jury's out on that. We'll see how that goes, but I'm going to have some more data coming in the coming weeks and months about how much a heat pump is actually using in the real world for a 4-bed house, 140 square meters, blah, blah, blah. No EV usage, and this seems to be a critical one for many of you. The reason why I've ruled that out is we will inevitably get an EV, but we don't really use our car. It's not our primary means of transport. We walk and cycle, and we're very lucky in that respect. So my wife also does have a bit of commute to work, but she has a little moped Vespa that you might have also seen on the channel at some point. So even when we do come to change to an EV, it's not really going to skew it much, because we don't do a lot of mileage, so there won't be a lot of kilowatt hours there to account for, and secondly, because it's sat on the drive now and I'm working from home, and it pretty much would all the time. If we have solar on the roof and a Zappy charger, we can charge the car 100% from solar rather than worrying about the import rate. Although that will then take a little bit of a hit on how much we could export. But again, it's not many miles, so it wouldn't be massively relevant. This is not factoring in any seasonal spikes and dips and stuff. Your usage profile may be very flat over the year, over the season. Mine definitely isn't going to be. I've got a heat pump now. We've cut off the gas, so there's going to be a real pronounced V-shape usage profile. And the winter months are going to be consuming a huge amount of electricity compared to the summer months for us. The assumption that we're not talking about any of the environmental factors here. This is just a financial calculation to our best estimates and using some assumptions, but we're not talking about grid emissions or embodied carbon here in the actual products. And of course, the big one, and I know this is a hard one, but I'm not factoring in any tariff price changes or putting anything in for inflation, not even the target rate of 2%, like not even considering those things at all, which, depending on how you look at it, that could be a benefit or that could also be a negative for the case of batteries. So anyway, because these numbers have changed a little bit from last time, you can see now, if you didn't watch that video, I'd highly recommend you go back and watch that. Home battery, not in 2024. Loads of people were really enlightening, really helped me. We've got 146 comments in one day, and it's been a great sounding board. So if you've got something to contribute, you'll see I reply to every comment, and some of you clearly know what you're talking about and know a lot more than I do anyway, so you should be making these videos. Annual export, again, this is just a massive guess based on what we know about our roof and potential for solar on our roof. We don't yet have it, so again, this is just another assumption in my sheets here. But these are the combined costs, import and export. The tracker is £390 per year. That's not kilowatt hours. I should put some unit measurements in here. If we were using 80% from Octopus Go, it would be £476. Now, the reason in my case where that is not viable to use 80%, and this last week we had cold snap, there were some days where I was approaching a daily use of 50 kilowatt hours. So although since we've had the heat pump, we are kind of floating around, our mean for that 2-month period is 22 kilowatt hours. So we'd still need quite substantial battery capacity to try and cover these really cold winter months. It's not really feasible and not really economically viable. And this is one of the points that was made over and over again in the comments. And I was trying to reiterate that, and maybe I didn't articulate it clearly last time, that this is just for my use case without the high consumption of an EV, but at the same time with the high consumption of a heat pump, which changes the dynamic of how you use energy quite dramatically. And I've heard so many times in the heat pump groups with the heat pump evangelists, they say just get solar and battery and a heat pump and it's the trifecta and it's going to solve all your energy struggles. But actually, when you're generating solar, you don't need your heat pump, and vice versa, very roughly speaking. And you're never going to have enough battery capacity to cover 100% of your heating load. It's just not viable, even with some of the smart tariffs like Octopus Cozy, for example, that you could charge your batteries twice a day. Anyway, what are we looking at on the screen here? Capital cost of home battery. So a few of you tuned in and saw that I had a figure of £2,500 on there. That was just showing kind of an entry level, smallish, cheap battery. For example, two 9.5 kilowatt hour Give Energy batteries are about £7,000 when installed with solar. I have had a few quotes. I've shared some of those on my channel. £7,000 invested in a 5% saving account for 10 years. Again, loads of assumptions. That's probably not going to stay at 5%, but here we are anyway. It will earn you £4,540 in interest because of the compound effect. Split that equally, for simplicity's sake, £454 per year. You're going to really struggle to make your money back out of two 9.5 kilowatt hour Give Energy batteries if you're comparing it to a pure financial investment. And the opportunity cost of that is a factor if you're looking at this again purely financially speaking. No green credentials, no grid independence, no other factors, just financially speaking. So even 100% self-consumption, it can't equal a 5% earning rate on, and those are available right now on many savings accounts, ISAs without any tax on them. So if you did invest in other things that may not have such a guaranteed return on investment, of course, you could be looking at 7% or even more. If you want to take a risk. But then again, installing solar and battery is not necessarily the the massively safe bet that it once was, as we can see from some of these calculations. So again, a massive assumption, we could at least spell it correctly, right, on high interest rate persisting. So my annual generation for my proposed solar system is 6,825 kilowatt hours. That is what we're looking to put on the roof. If I exported all of that, then I'd be looking at £1,023.75. My consumption forecasted, both of these are forecasts, 5,500 kilowatt hours. If I bought all of that in on the tracker tariff and it remained at the average that it has, 18p per kilowatt hour for my region for the last 6 months or so, then it cost me £990. That would mean I would net the profit of £33.75 if I would export all of the energy and I'd buy in all of the energy. Of course, that's not the real world. I work from home, so I can load shift a lot of things. I could put on the dishwasher and tumble dryer and all that sort of stuff throughout the day. We could also, in the shoulder months when there's some solar, and we could bring up the heat pump, we can heat the hot water during the day, etc., etc. So I don't know what this strategy is called here that I'm talking about, but basically exporting loads of energy during the summer months to offset the winter months consumption. I've just called this seasonal offsetting. I don't know if it's a term. I don't know if it's a strategy. I can't see anyone out there that's selling this, promoting this as an idea, as a philosophy, but in my mind it makes sense. And again, this is just theoretical and these are just some assumptions, so type away in the comments, let me know what you think about this. Of course, this is not the greenest way to go about things, so if you're just purely looking at environmental factors, then disregard this. I'm just talking about the finances. So what's this strategy called? Seasonal offsetting. That's what I'm calling it, unless there's a name already. So I've from my understanding, I should be able to achieve 2,500 kilowatt hours of self-consumption, and we should be able to export then the remainder 4,225 at an income of £633.75. If we then import the remaining amount, the remaining balance of what we would need, 3,000 at the tracker tariff at 18p per kilowatt hour at 540. So then it raises our profit from £33.75 to £93.75. So it shows how important that load shifting is and the general self-consumption from our solar generation. So here is then a proposed solar panel system for us with an awkward roof to try and generate 6,825. The solar panel system, we're looking at roughly 9,700. So if we now bring the solar panels into the equation, and if we were talking about on Octopus Tracker, originally I think our cost was £990 for 5,500 kilowatt hours. If we now add solar panels onto that, it brings our bill down and we save £896 per year by having the solar panels, which brings the projected forecast return on investment to 10.8 years. If we're comparing that to the price cap, then of course it brings the payback down to 6.7 years. And this is the point I'm making, the difference between Octopus Tracker as a tariff and the price cap as a tariff. Now people are telling me, yeah, but the tracker's going to change and you can't, base anything on that. Have you not seen how the price cap has changed in the last 2 years? Equally, we can't base anything on that. The tariffs could change at the flip of a coin. So if we added on the 5% earning that I was talking about earlier, if we'd invested that 9,700 financially, and we would end up with 15,992 after a return on investment, and this was over 10 years, so this is a 10-year investment. So that would then bring our payback time to 17.8 years for tracker and 11.1 years for the price cap. So of course there's the environmental benefits. It gives us insurance against price rises. A lot of you have mentioned that. I am betting on further market volatility, but I'm also betting that home battery prices will fall substantially. I know the raw material costs have absolutely plummeted and crashed in the last 6 months, and that is starting to trickle through to home batteries, and of course it still will. Now I just want to make some conclusions, okay? This is just some rubbish at the bottom here. Here are my conclusions. Let me know what you think. Maybe I'm way off with this. For me, in my use case, not talking about you, this is not an attack at you for having an electric vehicle and having much higher consumption and not having a heat pump or whatever your choices and lifestyle are, that doesn't matter. All I can do is deal with what's in front of me with my figures. My conclusion is that solar panels and or a home battery may never pay themselves off financially. For example, 15,992, that was after a 10-year investment. If I then changed that to match the 17.8, this would then increase, and it would just be a never-ending perpetual cycle that you would never be able to keep up with the compound interest that you could earn from a good savings, or not just necessarily a savings account, but invest in the money financially elsewhere. For me, the heat pump is a better return on investment so far. The amount of money we've saved already in 2 months is about £200 on our bills compared to an old inefficient gas boiler. Your mileage may vary depending on how efficient your current boiler is, etc. But ultimately, probably the biggest point here is reducing your consumption through insulation, if you're talking about home energy consumption, or by changing your lifestyles and habits, is going to yield a far greater saving than any of the technology that you could wish for with solar, batteries, heat pumps. In terms of financial cost, reducing the consumption through those means is going to yield you much better gains, and there are a lot of quick wins with that. A few people have actually questioned the low consumption considering I've got a heat pump. We are a family of 5, and I don't know, we have some good habits, but we don't scrimp. I've got young kids, TVs, all sorts of stuff on. I don't want to cast any aspersions and make any judgment on anyone with much higher consumption and use. I'm sure there are reasons, but reducing our consumption is probably a much wiser strategy if you want to save some money, rather than investing in a solar system or a battery system. Now, that all being said, I am steaming ahead with a solar panel system, but for me it's more than just the finances, and I'm kind of hedging my bets in a few of those areas as I've highlighted. But there are massive environmental benefits. We can save a huge amount of CO2, and we can insure ourselves against the future, ultimately looking forward to some grid independence. I hope all of that makes sense. I hope I didn't skim through things too quickly, and I hope that this gives people pause and they think about some big financial decisions. The purpose of the video is do your homework, do your sums, know your usage, know your own consumption, so that you're not just at the mercy of someone who wants to sell you a battery quickly, because I'm sure the electricians fitting them won't mind me saying that fitting a home battery is a relatively quick win. There's potential for good markup on the products. It's relatively low man hours compared to a lot of difficult jobs that electricians do. And quite typically, a lot of their customers are well off. They're upper middle classes, they're affluent people, where the electricians can make some good money. Anyway, I need to just stop talking, so I'm going to end the video there. Let me know what you think in the comments. Is 2024 the year where home batteries aren't going to make much sense as the current economic model sits? Or is the fact that everyone's getting an EV and the amount of power, the amount of energy needed for those vehicles for charging at home just outweighs everything else in my spreadsheet and my assumptions here, and the only way forward is going to be on Octopus Go, Octopus Intelligent Go, whichever tariff you're lucky to get on? Let me know. I'm really interested in the comments. I'm learning a lot from you guys, so thanks for sharing your wisdom, your knowledge, and your experiences with me. See you next time.